الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. जमात अहमदिया में एक फिक्रा
There is a phrase in the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat which every Ahmadi man, woman, elder and youngster is familiar with, which is that I will give precedence to my faith over worldly matters. And we know this because the promised Messiah, on whom be peace, has laid great emphasis and reminded us of this. Often in the writings and speeches of speakers in the Jamaat, as well as the addresses of the Khulafa-e Ahmadiyyat, this phrase is commonly used. The conditions of the Bai'at in a nutshell is that one will give priority to their faith over the world. Similarly, the summary of the pledge of all the auxiliary organizations is also that they will give preference to their religion over everything in the world. In the words of the Bai'at, the Oath of Allegiance, we recite these very words. In short, this phrase is the pledge of an Ahmadi. His or her Bai'at is reliant upon this. His or her connection with the Khilafat and the Nizam-e-Jamaat, the system of the community, is also dependent upon this. If this is not practiced, then one's pledge of Bai'at would be falsified, and an Ahmadi's pledge to be connected to the system of the Jamaat and Khilafat would also be proved wrong. One's announcement of the Bai'at and claim to be doing everything to please Allah the Almighty would only be verbal claims and lip service. It is for this very reason that the promised Messiah, on whom be peace, has said that if one claims and verbally professes in the Bai'at that they will give precedence to their faith over worldly matters, yet on the other hand, through his or her practices, they do not prove this claim to be true, nor are they loyal to their pledge, God the Almighty will be completely unconcerned for them. Thus, each and every single one of us needs to constantly remember and keep this point in view. As is clear from this phrase, no worldly thing should prove to be an impediment in the way of our religion and faith. What is the faith and the religion? The religion is leading one's life in accordance with the commands of Allah the Almighty. It is to please Allah the Almighty with your every word and deed. With the grace of the Almighty Allah, there is a large proportion of us who strive to achieve this. They make every effort to remove any impediment in the path of their practicing their religion of faith. However, it is also true that not everyone's efforts will be completely equal to one another. Every person's intellectual capacity and abilities are different to others. Similarly, all of our capacities and other faculties are different. Certainly, because Allah the Almighty knows our intentions and motives, He judges each and every person in accordance with their faculties and capacities. So thus the fundamental requirement in order to fulfill this pledge is a pious intention. There should be no excuses whatsoever. We observe in worldly matters that every single person's circle is different. Some people make efforts in a limited circle because their knowledge, their capacities, faculties and abilities are lesser in order to achieve that particular goal. Sometimes there are other priorities which prove to be impediments in his path which limit his scope. At other times, man makes considerable and great efforts and does so in a proper and apt manner in order to achieve the objective and goal in view. His sole focus is in achieving his aim. Ultimately, he is completely successful in reaching his objective. Hazrat Muslih Maud, may Allah be pleased with him, has also expounded on this topic. Availing from his explanations and in light of his discourses, I will particularly mention some of the accounts he has related. Efforts in a limited scope and in accordance with one's objectives can be depicted in a common example, which has been given by Hazrat Muslih Maud in the following manner. There are some people who, when they are walking or going somewhere, are very conscious and particular that their clothing should be completely well kept. They ensure that no creases enter into their clothing. And they are very careful that no wrinkles or any other form of deformity should appear in their clothes. Even if they are in a hurry to reach somewhere, they will regularly cast a glance upon their clothes to ensure everything is well kept. Indeed, this is also a reason why some people are impeded in reaching somewhere quickly. This is not just a case of that time. We find such examples even today. This is particularly true in our Asian society, where we find this to be the state of the men and women. At times, they are over-conscious about their clothing. In contrast, there are people who, although are very keen and enthusiastic about their fashion and clothes, yet when they have a certain objective in view, they sacrifice their fashion, style and clothing. If they have to rush somewhere despite their clothing and appearance being disturbed, they will do so. If they have to sit somewhere in this state, they will do so to the extent that even if they have to walk through dust if required, they will do so without any hesitation at all. Why is this so? This is because their sole focus is upon their objective, which they aim to fulfill at every cost. This is why they are unconcerned about anything else along this way. The best suit or white clothing does not prove to be a hindrance in their way. To shed further light on the fact of how people will sacrifice outward appearances or things in order to fulfill their goal, Hazrat Muslih Maud has given the example of an account in the history of England. It is mentioned in history with relation to Queen Elizabeth I. This is not the current queen, but the queen who perhaps in 1558 acceded to the throne. She reigned for approximately 45 years and was a very famous queen. In fact, it was during her reign that the foundation for the might and greatness of England was laid. It was known regarding the Queen that she was particularly fond of courtiers who were very well dressed and excessively refined and fastidious in their taste of clothing and attire. Anyone who was not well dressed in extravagant, lavish and fancy clothing was not permitted to enter. This is why it was said that she was always surrounded by fashionable, stylish and well-dressed young courtiers. Once she was going somewhere on foot with her courtiers. When en route, they reached somewhere which was muddy. Now they have well-built roads here, but there was an era here when there were dirt roads. At the time with her, Admiral of the Navy or the Commander-in-Chief, who was extremely close and loyal to the Queen. He was an extremely well-dressed, elegant young courtier. When the mud spot came on the way, at the time he was wearing a special coat or cloak which was very expensive and worn by courtiers on particular occasions. Observing the mud, he immediately took off that special coat. He then placed his coat on that small area where the mud was. The Queen found this extremely strange. It was such a costly coat, yet he had placed it upon the mud. So the Queen asked in great astonishment. His name was Sir Walter Raleigh. So she asked him what he was doing. He immediately responded, "It is better for Raleigh's coat to be spoilt than for the Queen's feet or shoes to be spoilt." This response pleased the Queen. He was conferred with even greater honors and given the highest ranks and status. After, in the era of King James I, he was charged with treason and sentenced to death. Even during the era of King James, Sir Walter Raleigh carried out great services for the country, including embarking on many expeditions to North America. Yet he was punished in this manner. So the moral we derive from this story is that Walter Raleigh, in spite of being extremely well dressed, stylish and fashionable, when it came to the matter of the honor of the Queen, he sacrificed all of this. So if a worldly person can fortify his fashion and style for the sake of the Queen, giving up his most valuable and expensive cloak and his style in the process, so thus we should ponder how much do we need to do for the progress, establishment, strengthening of Islam and to please Allah the Almighty. Should this objective not be as dear to us as was Sir Walter Raleigh's aim to please his monarch? After pleasing a worldly monarch, despite so many services, as I said, he reached a very terrifying fate and end. When one pleases Allah the Almighty and attains His pleasure, he receives rewards and blessings in this world, and he also reaches the best fate and end. We should always remember that for the objective to be the highest and most noble is not sufficient, unless sacrifices, fidelity and dedication match it. We will attain the pleasure of Allah the Almighty when the world does not come to encompass our matters of faith. Rather, it will be when we give precedence to our faith over the world. Indeed, Allah the Almighty has not forbidden us to earn our living in the world. It is not inappropriate or impermissible to avail of anything which Allah the Almighty has considered as not forbidden. To wear the best clothes, to eat the best foods, to live and decorate, the most excellent houses. None of these things are forbidden. All are permissible. However, what is not allowed is for any of these things to prove to be an impediment in the progress of Islam. Now marriages take place, however Islam does not say to search out the most ugliest woman and marry her. However, certainly it does say that the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said that do not only look at worldly things, rather also look at the state of spirituality and faith in the woman. The Sharia, the Islamic law, says that a woman should not prove to be an obstacle in your worship. Women should not make you negligent in your worship and supplications. If our boys and girls are mindful of this point, indeed if their parents are also mindful, then by giving precedence to the faith, domestic issues would also be resolved. That objective would be fulfilled, which is the purpose of a believer, and that is to attain the pleasure of God. Similarly, there is clothing and attire. It is not forbidden at all to be well dressed, but certainly what we have been prevented from is not to remain constantly immersed so much in fashion that it makes us negligent of a religion. We should not only be preoccupied with the thought of how one should keep their clothing wherever they go. In short, at no point should anyone be made to be negligent in any of their religious obligations. We should not lose our focus on the prayer and instead be worried about our good clothing that we have wore, and because the clothes have been ironed, we are only concerned lest any wrinkles or folds enter into our clothes. So Islam says, never be negligent of your religious duties. It is only then will you fulfill the right of giving precedence to your faith over worldly matters. There is also the best foods. Religion does not stop us from eating them. However, for that to be an impediment in our faith and religious practices makes that impermissible. So we should always keep these points in view. Those things which prove to be an obstacle in our faith must be avoided. In this light, the promised Messiah, on whom be peace, says, "Look, there are two types of people. Firstly are those who accept Islam and then become engrossed in worldly business, trade and work. Satan dominates and overwhelms them. They become entirely immersed with worldly matters. The promised Messiah says, I do not mean here that business, trade or employment is forbidden, for the companions also carried out trade. However, they gave precedence to their faith over the world. After they accepted Islam, they attained true knowledge and perception and also conviction of the heart, which immersed them with complete belief about Islam. This is why they never faltered or stumbled in any field in the face of the assaults of Satan. No matter could stop them from expressing and upholding the truth. Those who become entirely subjugated and slaves of the world become as if worshippers of the world. Such people are entirely encompassed by Satan. The other type of people are those who are always concerned and worried about progressing in the faith. They are called Hizbullah, the party of Allah. They triumph over Satan and his hosts. As was mentioned earlier, through a quote of the promised Messiah alayhi salam, it is by giving precedence to the faith over the world that the purpose of the Bai'at is fulfilled. To attain true knowledge and understanding of this, along with our worldly endeavors, to acquire religious and spiritual knowledge, and then to adopt it in one's life, is also something which is essential and necessary. Without acquiring religious knowledge, one cannot come to know what the religion actually is, which a person has to give precedence to over the world. prayer is a fundamental pillar of Islam. But there are many Muslims, in fact we can say that there are more than 80% who do not offer their prayers. And even if they offer one or two prayers here and there, and they pray as if they are doing something rapidly undesirous and wrong. This is why Hazrat Muslih Maud has written that there are many prominent figures who are slack in their prayer. Indeed, for aristocratic and elite category of people, to offer the congregational prayer is equal to them as is eating the flesh of the swine is for ordinary Muslims. This means that they offer the prayers with great abhorrence. This does not only relate to the previous times. This very state exists today also. As I said, the majority of rich people, and indeed even those who start becoming affluent, start becoming slack and negligent in their prayers. Even if they offer their prayer, they are negligent in developing that state which should be formed of the prayer. Those who offer the prayer are the guardians of human values. Allah the Almighty has said that the prayers bring about pious changes in a person. It is said that nowadays, in the non-Ahmadi mosques in Pakistan, the congregations are considerably increasing. Even if they are increasing, the question is, what revolution has it brought about in them? The mullah and the ones who lead the prayer do not preach anything else but hatred and enmity. So in spite of the increased congregations, the fire of hatred and enmity continues to flame. Let alone the opposition and enmity against us. They are also exceeding in their cruelties and injustices amongst one another. And the reason for this is that their worship is not to give precedence to their faith. Rather, it is to fulfill their worldly goals. On the surface, they go to the mosques for a higher and elevated objective. But within, their actual motive and intention is lowly worldly aims. So therefore, in order to achieve the highest objectives, it is also necessary to elevate one's thoughts. Sacrifices should not be for personal or vested interest. Rather, they should only be aimed to attain the pleasure of Allah. So if the increase in the congregations of the mosques is not in view of the highest ideals, that alongside fulfilling the right of God, the right of God's creation should also be established, that the propagation of Islam should be carried out, then all of these things would otherwise be completely useless. The general painful state of the Muslims today should lead us, the Ahmadis, to giving greater attention than before. We have made a pledge to give precedence to our faith over worldly matters. How must we come to understand this greater than before? Alongside fulfilling the rights due to Allah the Almighty, we need to also discharge the rights due to God's creation. We need to strive to make efforts for the propagation and establishment of Islam. Once we do this, it is permissible to avail as much as we like from worldly blessings. The responsibility of spreading the beautiful teachings of Islam has been entrusted upon us. We must discharge this. It has been made our responsibility to translate and publish the Holy Quran into various languages. We must discharge this right. We must construct mosques in all directions, so that we can make people into true worshippers of God. So in order to fulfill these rights, we must form plans and strategies in every single country of the world.
इंसानियत की कदरों को
It is we who have to establish the best and highest ideals of human values. If we do all of this alongside earning a livelihood in the world, then our earning a livelihood will be our faith. But if we do not act in this way, then even our permissible acts would be, in the sight of Allah the Almighty, impermissible. If when one receives some money, they have to purchase the new iPhone, or have to purchase a new car, or another suit, and as a result of yearning for these things, we push behind our Jannah, then despite all of these amenities being permissible, they become impermissible under these circumstances.
मस्जिद की तमीर के लिए कोशिश हो रही है अगर एक जगह
If in one place efforts are being made to build a mosque, yet we give preference to our other worldly desires, then despite the fact that those worldly desires might be permissible in normal circumstances, however, in this context, they become impermissible.
जंग ओहद में
When during the battle of Uhud, the rumor had spread rife that the Holy Prophet ﷺ had been martyred. At the time, a companion had been starving for many days. He had halted after fighting because it was already a state of victory.
सूखी खजूरें थीं सूखी खजूरें खा रहे थे
So this companion had some dry dates, which he was eating at the time. Indeed, this was his meal.
उन्होंने सुनी इत्तला उनको पहुंची
When he heard this news, he immediately threw away his dates. He leapt into the battlefield and was martyred.
अपने पेट की और भूख
So thus, he was completely unconcerned about his hunger, for he considered eating those dates to be a sin under those circumstances.
कर रहा था
His faith and the religion at the time required of him that eating the dates would have been wrong and forbidden. Thus, those things which prove to be an obstacle in the path of religion and faith, however much good, excellent and exquisite they may be, are impermissible. Those things which do not prove to be an obstacle in the path of religion, no matter how comfortable or luxurious they are not wrong or inappropriate. They become permissible.
बस हमें वो रूह पैदा करने की
Thus, we should strive to instill that spirit which makes the state of our heart yearn to seek the pleasure of Allah the Almighty.
एक रवायत में आता है
Allah the Almighty knows fully well the state of the hearts of every person.
और दिलों के हाल जानने के बारे में ये रवायत है
A tradition relates that the Holy Prophet ﷺ was once sitting in the mosque and there were some people alongside with him. During this time, 3 people came before him. 2 of them went straight to the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and 1 turned away. The 2 of them came near to the Holy Prophet ﷺ and stood near to him.
इनमें से एक जो था
One of them saw that beside the Holy Prophet ﷺ was an empty space. Thus, he rushed forward and he sat next to the Holy Prophet. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him.
दूसरा जो था
The second person sat behind the people in the same place where he had been standing and he had found room. The third person thought that there was no room, so he turned his back and walked away.
जो रसूलुल्लाह
When the Holy Prophet ﷺ finished his address, he said, "Shall I not inform you about the condition of these 3 people?
इनमें से एक ने तो
One of these people has found his place of refuge with God, for Allah the Almighty has given him refuge, the person who sat next to me. The second person showed modesty and shame, and thus Allah the Almighty showed modesty to him. In other words, this meant that his sitting there in that assembly and gathering proved to be a source of him having his sins forgiven, Because he showed modesty and shame, Allah the Almighty forgave his sins. The third person turned away, so Allah the Almighty also turned away from him. Now, on the surface, it appears to be a normal account of three people coming, sitting, or standing and turning away. Because a third person thought that as I would not be able to hear, there is no point of sitting there. But because the three actions of the people related to the state of their heart, and was indeed an expression from within each of these three people, and Allah the Almighty looks at the heart of people. Allah the Almighty rewards people according to the condition of their hearts. And hence, it is the state of the heart which plays a pivotal role in terms of rewards and consequence. This is something which must be remembered. So this is how Allah the Almighty dealt with these three people here. God, the Supreme, saw the state of the hearts of all of the three people. God the Almighty knows the state of each person's heart. He saw within who in the matter of the faith was more advanced and progressed, and who was slack and negligent. The first two were given rewards according to their rank and status, and the third remained deprived. Indeed, God the Almighty showed displeasure towards him. So thus a believer needs to reflect to what extent has he made a sacrifice for the aim he is trying to fulfill. If he makes a sacrifice to the extent required, then he receives God the Almighty's help and blessings. Sacrifices are always made either according to one's capacities and strength or according to the need and requirement. It is not always necessary that sacrifices should be made according to one's strength and capacity. At times, the Sharia only asks for a sacrifice according to the need. For example, there is somebody on a journey. There are a few people standing before him. He makes a genuine request for £100. So some people amongst the group before the journeyman fulfill that requirement according to what they had. But yet there remains a shortfall of £10. So during that time, another person comes into the picture who is well off. If he so desires, he could fulfill that full requirement of that journeyman. But according to the need of the time, only £10 are required. So thus he handed over £10. So this is something he is fulfilling according to what he is requesting. He may have greater capacity and be affluent, but he fulfilled the need according to what was put before him. This is a sacrifice according to the need and requirement, which this affluent person made with a pious and good intention. So such a person would be rewarded accordingly. Similarly, if for example a financial appeal is made for chanda, and there are people giving in their hundreds and thousands, yet there is a poor and deprived person who according to his capacity gives a few pounds or a few rupees. So Allah the Almighty, who looks over the hearts of people, will reward him accordingly. Such a person would thus meet his objective. So the rich person in this situation fulfilled his objective, because at a time of need, although according to his capacity it was a small amount, he fulfilled the requirement of the person who needed it. The poor person also reached his objective, because according to his capacity, or perhaps even beyond it, he spent for the sake of attaining the pleasure of Allah. This is why it is mentioned in a hadith that 1 dirham proved to be greater and more superior than 100,000 dirhams. Because one person who only had 2 dirhams gave 1 dirham. Another person had hundreds of thousands in wealth, but only gave 100,000, which was very low according to his means. So thus, we need to always remember that the ultimate and real objective should always be to attain the pleasure of Allah. In the previous example, both of the people, both the rich and the poor, had the pleasure of Allah the Almighty in view as their ultimate aim.
कि अल्लाह ताला की रज़ा को हासिल करने के लिए अपने दिल की कैफियत को
So the real task of a believer is that to attain the pleasure of Allah the Almighty, they should transform the state of their heart for this purpose. His objective should be the pleasure of God. Therein lies his success and prosperity.
ढालता है इसी में उसकी फलाह और कामयाबी।
This is what is giving precedence to the faith over worldly matters. As I have said, we have been entrusted with immense responsibilities. We pledge to sacrifice our life, wealth, time, property and honor. Indeed, we should always constantly reflect with seriousness upon this, that what manner and techniques are we utilizing to fulfill our pledges, using all our capacities and capabilities in order to give precedence to our faith over worldly matters. From today, the Ansarullah Ijtima will begin as well as the Shura. They should also reflect and ponder in the Shura, and they should also assess during the days of the Ijtima that to what extent should they develop and progress their standard and increase their level of giving precedence to their faith over the world. Certainly Ansarullah should do this because at their age they should become role models for others. God the Almighty has absolutely no need of anything of ours. Thus it is His grace, His favor and His reward that He says that if we give precedence to the faith over the world, we will attain His pleasure and will be conferred with His blessings and bounties. Otherwise, I gave examples of money and financial contributions. God the Almighty stands in no need of any of this from us. God does not need us or anyone else. All these resources, silver, gold and wealth have been created by God. If God the Almighty so desired, He could have distributed this amongst those who serve the faith. However, Allah the Almighty has informed us of our objectives and drew our attention to making sacrifices in order to attain these purposes, so we can come to attain His pleasure. God the Almighty has not only given us wealth. In fact, Allah the Almighty has also given us children. He could have formed other means for the upbringing of children, but Allah the Almighty has taught parents to give their children upbringing and moral training. He said that spend on them according to their means, so that they can form the highest ideals and values. Thus the children can become beneficial in serving the faith when they grow up. This is a great responsibility on Ahmadi parents, in terms of how much they give good upbringing to their children, so they can come to be beneficial to the faith. Only then will the pledge of giving precedence to the faith of the world can be discharged. Children should be brought up in such a manner that they come to acquire proper understanding, perception and insight into giving precedence to their religion and faith over the world right from the very childhood. Allah the Almighty has entrusted these responsibilities upon us and places us on trial, but also confers us with rewards and blessings. Here I would like to also admonish office holders at all levels that the pledge of giving precedence to the faith over worldly matters is the responsibility that they should understand to a greater degree than others. A duty has been placed upon them in order to fulfill a goal and objective. They need to increase their standard and level of sacrifice. Similarly, office holders of every level, from the smallest vicinities and neighborhoods to the central office holders, need to have a correct understanding of their position and status. They need to make every possible effort to strive to fulfill their pledges as required. Remember, God looks at the heart of people. Allah the Almighty confers blessings to those who work with sincerity, passion and zeal. He gives them a place of nearness to Him. Office holders should try their level best to attain this rank and status. May Allah the Almighty enable office holders at every level, as well as every Ahmadi, you and I, to be enabled to have true insight and perception and understanding of giving precedence to the faith over worldly matters. May we be enabled to act and practice upon this. Today also there is some tragic news. A martyrdom has occurred in Pakistan. Latif Alam Bhatt Sahib, son of Khurshid Alam Bhatt Sahib of Kangra district, Attock, at 7 o'clock at night on the evening of the 15th of October. Two unknown persons on a motorcycle fired at him and martyred him. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Surely to Allah belong and to Him we shall return. He had a stationery shop near to his home. According to his routine, he was returning from work back home. He reached the alleyway near to his house when two unknown persons on a motorbike called out at him. They said, Bhatt Sahib. As soon as he turned around, one of them fired at him. As a result, 4 of 5 bullets hit the chest of the martyred. After firing, his son Zishan Bhatt Sahib was notified by someone where he rushed to the scene. The emergency rescue services also reached the scene, and at the time Bhatt Sahib was in consciousness. En route on the way to the hospital in Attock, he reached martyrdom. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The family of Latif Ahmed Bhatt Sahib was from Gujranwala. Ahmadiyyat started through his father, Khurshid Alam Bhatt Sahib, who took the Bai'at in 1934, when he was blessed with entering into the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The Shaheed was born in April 1952 in Gujranwala. He studied until FA and then he entered into the Air Force. From the Kamra Air Force, he retired as an air technician in 1991. His elder son, Khurram Bhatt, is now working in the Air Force. After retirement, the Shaheed had a book business. He would provide legal books to lawyers, which he would provide in various Pakistani courts. He was very well known, and many non-Ahmadi lawyers gave accolades regarding him. At the time of the martyrdom, he was serving as the Nazim Ishat Ansarullah. In addition, on a district level, he served as Secretary Ziyafat, Khadam al-Ahmadiyya, and also Setu Jismani, which he had been enabled to serve in these capacities. For a long period of time, his house has been used as a prayer center. Other Jamaat programs, Jalsa meetings, and gatherings would be held there. He was always prepared to give Jamaat services. Whatever duty he would be entrusted with, he would fulfill excellently. He never turned down any Jamaat work. He was an extremely hospitable person. He had great dedication, devotion with Jamaat, demonstrated immense loyalty and obedience to Khilafat. Apart from his 5 daily prayers, he always said his Friday prayers, which he was mindful of. 2 hours before their Friday prayer, he would go to the mosque. He was an extremely courageous and fearless person. In 2007 and 8, there were 2 unknown people who also tried to shoot at him. They fired at him, but the bullet became stuck in the gun, and one of the assailants was captured at the time. He was handed over to the police, but later he escaped. He was a person of high moral standing and was a very awe-inspiring person. He was extremely keen for the good educational upbringing of his children. At the time of his martyrdom, he was 62 years old. He had filled the Vasiyat form. It was yet in process, but now the Majlis Kardo Pas should approve his Vasiyat. In fact, I approve his Vasiyat. And so, whatever proceedings should be done, should be gone ahead with, treating him as a Musi. The Amir Sahib of the district said that he showed extraordinary sentiments of service and respect for Jamaat office holders and the Nizam. In Jamaat programs and gatherings, he would always be active and participate. He was never absent from any Jamaat program. He leaves behind in his family, apart from his wife, 1 daughter, Iram Wasim, daughter of Sayyid Wasim Ahmed Sahib, and 4 sons, Khurram Butt, who works in the Air Force, Zishan Butt. After his education, he helped his father in his business. Umar Butt is studying electrical engineering. And Ali Butt Sahib, who is working. Mahmood Mujib Askar Sahib has been the Amir of the district of the time. He says that after retirement from the Air Force, the martyr permanently resided in that area. He did so with the intention that there was no permanent person of the Jamaat there, because there are people working in the factory and the Air Force work there, transfer and leave. So there was no Jamaat there. That is why he built his house there, so that there could be a prayer center and a Jamaat could be established. May Allah the Almighty enable for his intention to bear fruit, and in return of this martyrdom, may hundreds and thousands of Ahmadis be granted to us over there, and may a Jamaat be fully established. May Allah the Almighty elevate the status of the martyred, and may Allah the Almighty grant steadfastness, patience and solace to the bereaved family. May Allah the Almighty keep the members of the Jamaat safe in Pakistan in every way. The enemy is now continuously increasing and intensifying in their enmity. May Allah the Almighty rapidly bring about a state of peace for us.
Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله